She's a Mona Lisa. Everyone's lining up to see her. She's a Mona Lisa. Everyone's lining up.
Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kiana and today I have another DIY tutorial for you. I went to Joann's the other day and got a few fabrics just because I wanted to. They were calling my name and I had to buy them, and also they were like fall colored, and I really wanted to make something. Yesterday I literally just picked one of the fabrics I bought, was playing around with it, and came up with this dress. I'll link the exact fabric that I used down below from Joann's. It's a 4-way stretch spandex, so it has a lot of freaking stretch. You can do a lot with it. And it's like coated in this finishing that is weird. It makes it kind of look like pleather. Before we get into it, I just want to say freaking like and subscribe, bro. Please. Leave comments on what you want me to do next. And any questions. Also, really quickly before we start the real tutorial, I just want to give you a couple tips on how to work with knits. They do require extra machinery like a serger or a cover stitch. If you're a beginner and you don't want to shell out $1,000 or more for those two machines, you don't have to. You can work with knits on your home sewing machine. Most people know that if you don't have a serger, you can substitute a zigzag stitch for that. And there are multiple kinds of zigzag stitches that you could use, like to finish the edge of your fabric or to actually sew together the fabric. You could use a zigzag stitch, and that way when you sew the seams here and on the sides, the fabric will still stretch and you won't break that stitch and that seam. So most people know about that, and also a lot of people know that you can also just hem your fabrics with a zigzag stitch. However, you'll be able to see that zigzag stitch like on the hems. But a lot of people don't know about this. You can actually kind of fake a cover stitch on your knits with a home sewing machine. This is what a cover stitch looks like. You don't need a cover stitch machine if you're a beginner. I have a cover stitch machine because it does look a lot more professional on the inside, and it's a little bit better. I mean, it is better, but if you don't care what the insides of your garments look like, the outside of this twin needle stitch on your regular sewing machine looks exactly the same as a cover stitch, and it stretches. So that's a really good freaking alternative if you don't want to buy a cover stitch. Okay, so we got an alternative for the serger, we got an alternative for the cover stitch, so you should be able to sew this entire dress on your home sewing machine if you want to, and work with knits on your home sewing machine. Now I'm going to show you how to do the faux cover stitch on your home sewing machine. So this is a twin stretch needle that I got from Joann's for like $5, and you just insert it into your machine as normal. You do need 2 spools of thread, so I have one on the machine, one on this freestanding spool holder. I just wrapped my thread around that other spool of thread because I didn't want to buy 2 spools. So you just thread them both through the machine thread through the left needle, the other thread through the right needle, and then just sew normally, and then you'll have your faux cover stitch. Really comparable to a real cover stitch. This is what a real cover stitch looks like done on my cover stitch machine. Great from the front, but very professional from the back, and this one also stretches a little bit better. But this is what the faux cover stitch done with a twin needle looks like. It looks exactly the same on the front, stretches well, looks a little worse on the back, but you can trim close to that to make it look more professional. Either way, it's a great alternative if you don't have a cover stitch and you want to sew with knits on your home sewing machine. I would really recommend this method. Alright, now onto the real tutorial. So for this, I'm just taking some fabric that is of similar weight and stretch to the fabric we will be using for our dress. I'm just kind of shaping it around the dress form because I don't really know what I want to make at this point. So I'm just making a bodice pattern with the stretch fabric that has no darts or any shaping device. So I just pulled it really tight around the dress form to see what shape these pieces would need to be. And I'm also playing around with some pleats. I don't really know what I want to make, so I'm just pulling up the fabric, pinning it in place, creating some pleats. This is not how I'm patterning the pleats. Again, I'm just playing around. And then I'm going to take these pieces off the dress form, see what we have, and figure out what I want to make. Alright, so when you take the pieces off the dress form, this is what you're going to get. The green pieces are the ones I draped already. So I traced them out on some muslin. You can use pattern paper, but I didn't have that. And I made no changes to the back piece. And then the front piece, all I did was change the neckline, but nothing else, because as you can see, this shape doesn't really make any sense. You kind of need to add that point if you want to do some spaghetti straps. This curved point or this curved line on the bottom neckline doesn't really make sense. So all I did was change the neckline a little bit, but I changed nothing else. I didn't change the waist, I didn't change the length, and then I added 1/4 inch seam allowance around everything except for where you cut it out on the fold. Another way, if you don't have a dress form, you can grab a dress with a similar neckline that you want to use. I kind of took inspiration from this neckline because I really liked it, and you can trace your pattern pieces out actually directly from this. As you can see, my pattern pieces are a lot wider because this dress does not fit me. It is way too small, so it makes sense that my pattern pieces don't fit it. But yeah, you can derive your pattern pieces from your old clothes as well. So after you have your pattern pieces, I'm just going to measure around them and see if it is actually going to fit my body personally. So the first thing I'm going to do is measure the waistline, and the waistline for this particular top, I guess, is 12 inches across. So when you double that, because you need 2 sides of a garment, it'll be 24 inches across, which is great because my waist is like 25, 26, and this is stretchy fabric, so that is going to fit me well. And then around the bust line area, it's gonna end up being around, I think it was like total 29 inches, and my bust is like 30, 31. So that is gonna fit me well as well. Okay, so now we're gonna pattern out the skirt. So for the skirt, just make a mark where you want the top of the front of the skirt to be. It can truly be anywhere because we haven't done any other marks yet. And then draw a straight line down from that. However long you want the skirt to be. Mine is going to be 16 inches long, which is pretty dang short, especially for me, which I'm 5'9", so decide how long you want your skirt to be. And then I'm going to draw out a waistline. A waistline should not be a straight line. I start with a straight line on the center front because when you reflect it, you want it to reflect in not a weird way. Does that make sense? So you need to draw a 90-degree angle from the center front line out to begin with, and then you can draw a slightly curved line out to the hips because when it wraps around your body, it should curve a little bit. So I'm just kind of eyeballing it and drawing a little bit of a curve. And then I'm going to measure the waistline on the front bodice piece because the waistline on the front skirt piece needs to be the exact same measurement as the waistline on the front bodice piece because they need to match up. So when you sew them, that the side seams aren't all in weird places. So those two measurements need to be exactly the same. Now I'm marking 9 inches down from the waist level to mark my hip level, which is the widest part of your bum. And my distance, which is 9 inches, is kind of long. I think like 7 or 8 is more normal, but I'm kind of disproportionate in my lengths. So I just marked a straight line to mark my hip level because I want to then mark the widest part of the pattern piece there and draw a curved line to it. To get that mark, that width mark, I just measured my hips, which are like 37, subtracted 2 and divided by 4, and that is how wide the pattern is at my hips. And then I connected that to my waist with a curved line and then drew a straight line down to the hem. I hope you got all that. Originally I drew a straight line for the hem and then made a 2-inch seam allowance because in case I cut it too short, I didn't want to have to completely redo the skirt. So I added extra on the seam allowance, which was great because I ended up only hemming it 1 inch, even though I gave it 2 inches of seam allowance because it was really short on me. Now I'm adding 1/4 inch seam allowance around the rest of the edges. And then I just want to let you know that I actually changed my mind and made the hem not a straight line. I actually curved it down like 1/4 or 1/2 inch on the side seam. And you'll understand why I did that later on. I will explain it to you in depth, but short story is we're going to end up making the back hem longer. Now to make the back piece, I'm flipping it over, basically tracing around the piece exactly as it is. The only difference is that the back piece is going to be kind of like slimmer. It's going to be less wide because I have to match up the waistline seam to the waistline seam on the bodice piece. And the waistline seam on the bodice piece was not as long as the front bodice piece. Okay, now this is what I'm talking about with the hem. I'm making it longer in the back. So the center back of the hem is gonna end up being about an inch longer than the center front of the hem. So as you can see, the center back of the hem is the longest point, and I'm curving up to the side seam. And because I'm curving up to the side seam, it's gonna match with that side seam that's curving down on the front piece. They're gonna match up nicely. So that's why I did that. And also the reason why, if you're wondering why I made the back longer, it's because we got this thing called a bum, and it makes your clothes ride up, and you don't want that to be exposed. So I'm gonna make it a little bit longer in the back. Then again, I'm just measuring the width of the waistline on the bodice piece, matching that up with the waistline on the skirt piece. And then from there, I'm going to take my other skirt piece, line it up with the new side seam point, and just mark down that because I want to have the side seams sew up nicely together. And cut those all out. You got 4 pattern pieces, and then cut them all out on a fold. Now you can go ahead and sew the skirt to the bodice only on the back, not on the front like I'm motioning, and then it will look like this. Now I'm gonna make the pleated wrap front of the skirt. So I just trace out the front pattern pieces reflected on both sides, so we have like the full front skirt. And I'm gonna make the point of the skirt in that wrap design. You know what I'm talking about. You know what it looks like. You saw the dress in the intro. You know what, I'll insert it here. Here it is again. We're making that point part on the skirt. So I just drew down lower than the hemline into a little point on the side. Now I'm deciding where I want my pleats to be. This is kind of a trial and error. You can just keep on pulling up the fabric into a pleat. Do however many you want, however wide you want, and then you're gonna take that old pattern piece, put it back over on the right side, and trace out your new side seam line. And then also my point kind of got ruined, so I made a new point. Then I'm marking the pleats at the folds, so when I unpin them, I still know what those pleats should look like and where they should be folded up to and sewn. So it will look like this. And then I'll just put that on my fashion fabric, cut that out, make sure you mark where the pleats are, and then also pin them back up. I'm gonna go ahead and hem this piece and then also stitch down those pleats with my sewing machine so that they don't go anywhere when we try to connect that to other pieces later. Then I'm gonna take this wrap skirt piece and put it on the regular front skirt piece, and then also add the bodice front piece and connect them all at the waistline like so. And then after that, I'm going to add on my back of the dress and then just connect those at the side seams. However, at the side seam with that point of the wrap skirt, you don't want to go all the way down when you're sewing. You want to leave like a few inch gap, like probably like 3 or 4 or 5 even inches of a gap there, because you want to be able to hem it nicely, and you'll see what I mean later. Now I'm adding the straps. I cut out 2 strips of fabric that are 1 by 16 inches, folding that right sides together and using a zigzag stitch to stitch those down. Then I'm going to use the safety pin method to flip the straps right side out. Now we need to finish the neckline somehow on this dress. So you can either, turn it under and stitch it with like a zigzag stitch or a cover stitch or the twin needle stitch to hem it, or you could add a lining to the dress or to the bodice. Or what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a facing, because one, I want to conserve fabric because I want to use all this fabric for some other fun DIYs. And also it's the easiest one that looks the best, I think. So I'm gonna do that. So to do that, I take my front and back pattern pieces and I trace around the top of the neckline and then down the side seam a little bit. And then I'm going to mark 2 inches down or 2 inches out from all of those lines to make the facing. 2 inches was kind of not enough, so I would actually do 3 inches. I think 3 would be a perfect number, but the 2 inches, it worked, but I wish it was kind of a larger facing. Then I'm just cutting that out. I'm going to do the same thing with the back, and then I'm going to attach those 2 pieces at the side seams. Next, we're going to take our facing, put it right sides together with the dress, and pin around the entire neckline. Now we're going to add our spaghetti straps, so just insert that between the facing and the dress, and make sure the straps are an even distance away from the center front and from the side seams on the front and the back. just make sure it's even. Mine weren't, so I had to go back and adjust that, and I'm just gonna serge around the entire neckline, or you could use zigzag stitches also. After that, I'm just gonna hem the rest of the dress that we didn't hem before, and then close up the rest of the side seam that we had left open before so that we could hem the dress. And then after that, all you wanna do is tack the facing down at the side seam so it doesn't roll out. It wouldn't roll out if you had a lining. And also if you want it to really not roll out, you could top stitch with some zigzag stitches or understitch with some zigzag stitches, but this was good enough for me. The fabric was kind of sticky, so it stuck to my body. But anyways, after this, you're done. Woo! Alright, so that was the tutorial. Hopefully you learned a few things and learned how to make this cute freaking dress. Hopefully you like the dress, because I didn't really have a plan in mind when I started making it, but I think it turned out freaking cute. I don't know about you, but I thought it was cute. Anyways, let me know if you have any questions, like what do you want me to do next? Do you have any specific garments that you want me to sew? And then also, on that same note, do you have any other fashion related videos that you want me to do, like any like Q&A type videos, or truly any type of fashion video? Because it's really hard to do DIYs all the time because it takes a long time to sew things. As many of you know, sewing is hard. So if you have any requests, leave those below. Make sure you subscribe to me, like, comment, let me know if you have any sewing questions, and yeah, that's it. I'll see you next time. Bye.